longtime Vitamix user, so my son talked me into trying it, and one evening into it, the blades are as sharp as they say, as I got 2 fingers to prove it. So.
Well, at least we have that. Well, I'm here with RailCats skipper Greg Tagert, and this is episode 2 of the RailCats Chat. I'm Matt Friedman, and believe it or not, even with the snow that is draping the field here at U.S. Steel Yard, we are only less than 2 months now, depending on when you're watching this, away from RailCats opening day. It's coming up May 16th here against the Lincoln Salt Dogs. And one order of business before we get started talking to Greg. During March only, you can book a party deck, and your group of 20 or more can save $10 per ticket on a party deck. So that's for as little as $20 per person. You will get a party deck ticket at a RailCats game and an all-inclusive delicious buffet. So it's a great deal. Take advantage of that. During the month of March only, visit railcatsbaseball.com for more information on that. Now, Greg Tagert, the RailCats manager, has been very busy over this past month. You've had a lot of recent player moves, and the biggest one, certainly the headline maker, the signing of Cristian Guerrero, the RailCats all-time home run leader. He was with the club 2008 through 2011. What led to the team and Cristian splitting ways before the 2012 season when he played for Sioux Falls, and then how did you decide to end up bringing him back to Gary?
Well, certainly, to first talk about it, the excitement of having Cristian back here is evident in this first few days since we announced the signing, and who knows, we'll go along with that big buffet and the sweet sell. It's a great time in March to be a RailCat fan. But Cristian, to go back to 2011, one of those tough decisions, or at the end of the 2011 season, that you're faced with. And as Cristian, you have a lot of players at his age level, experience level, who ponder retirement. And it's just the nature, as we decided to move forward with things last year and with the roster decisions. Cristian he was recently married. He had moved to Delaware, from his home country in the Dominican. And, we were looking for a place on the East Coast that would be comfortable for Cristian. And it was in a situation for us that, we were looking to re-sign Mike Coles, the local product who had done a nice job for us back in 2006, and obviously a hometown favorite here. And one of those things, it just couldn't go hand in hand. And as time went on last winter, it became evident that it was going to be tough to re-sign Cristian and to get all the pieces in place. It's one of those decisions that you swallow hard on, because there's very few players that mean as much to me personally as Cristian does in terms of from a personal relationship standpoint. One of my favorites, not only from a player standpoint but a person standpoint. I think people that have been out here the last 4 years, the one thing, as much as they sense the excitement when Cristian comes to the plate, if they knew him as well personally as I do, they'd even be more of a fan. He's just an outstanding individual. So unfortunately, as we watched him hit homer after homer against the RailCats last year, it looked like he still had a little left in the tank. His year wasn't as good as he'd admit that he wanted it to be. He battled some injuries, and that's always a concern when a player gets to be that age. But we talked for a couple times. The Sioux Falls club allowed us to have some conversations with Cristian as it became evident in their situation that they were going to have to part ways, because of the classification issues, salary issues, all those things that go into play. And and a couple conversations led to Cristian fully committed to wanting to come back to Gary. I think one of the things he told me, it was his favorite place to play in all his minor league seasons. And if you look at that career spanning 12, 13 seasons, Matt, you know better than I right now, but make it that kind of statement, really meant a lot to me. Now, certainly we're hoping for the production that we're used to, and if we get that, we've got the best of both worlds, and everybody's excited, including myself.
And Greg, with Cristian Guerrero, of course you're hoping for that production on the field, the home runs, and a lot more than that. Let's talk about the person, as you mentioned, and what he brings to the RailCats clubhouse. And you were telling me off air already a lot of his teammates are excited about him returning.
Well, within the nature of players today, and I think just the society in general, the text message is the way of communication. So within just probably before the announcement of the signing, several of the players already knew. Mike Massaros ecstatic in several texts to me about getting Big Poppy back, as they like to call him. So, you get that kind of response from teammates. It tells you so much more of the story than what you see on the field. And anytime you can have that player that garners not only that respect and admiration, but just that feel good, feeling that the players have when that guy's in the clubhouse, when he's a part of the team. It says so much. And whether we all know talent is the most important thing in terms of a baseball player, any athlete in general. You've got to have talent to have success. But for a team to have success, you've got to have some camaraderie, you've got to have a chemistry, and I fully believe in it. I've seen it at its best over the years here in Gary, and Cristian Guerrero brings just a wealth of that chemistry, camaraderie, respect that you don't find every day.
Now, Greg, you mentioned that Mike Massaro, RailCats outfielder, is very excited to have Cristian Guerrero back. And he was joined, Mike Massaro, by Adam Klein, and recently re-signing with the RailCats. We already knew that was going to happen, but it's exciting to see it now on paper and official. How unique are the skill sets of Massaro and Klein as cornerstones in your outfield and as the top two hitters in the order compared to anybody else in the league? Is there a 1-2 punch like that anywhere?
I don't believe so. And after managing now for the last 15 plus years, whatever it may be, I've never had a skill set of those two at the top of the order. And I mean this sincerely. If I was to manage a major league team tomorrow, the first thing I would ask that general manager is to go out and sign Mike Massaro and Adam Klein. Those two, at the top of their game are as good as I've seen. I'm sure there's a lot of clubs in this league that feel very good about certain parts of their lineup, just like we feel good. However, having seen everybody over the last several years and having witnessed it myself, those two at the top of the order are unique and as good as I've ever seen. And again, it's so as happy as they were to see Cristian resign, I was just as happy to see Mike Massaro and Adam Klein come back, as was everybody from ownership on down. And those two mean just a tremendous amount to this ball club. They're unique in the fact that they're so good on the offensive side, but they are equally as good defensively. And that combination and that talent combination doesn't come along very often. And we got those two at the top of the order. My worries are a lot less, as we enter into an off season.
Mike Massaro, Adam Klein, Cristian Guerrero, three guys that RailCats fans are thrilled to have back in the fold. One player who will not be returning is David Cooper, an infielder. He was just traded this past week in what was a bit of a surprise to some RailCats fans. And he was somebody, he hit ninth in the order. He was almost like having a second leadoff hitter with his ability to reach base, to be a threat on the base path. So fans surprised by that trade. What can you tell those fans about why that move was made?
Yeah, certainly. It's one of those things that's always tough to do. And no different than the move we made with Cristian or many other players. It's just, I would, without sounding too cliche, it is the nature of the game and the business that goes along with it. David Cooper was a tremendous player for us, and and I'm personally thought so highly of him that we moved a longtime shortstop here in terms of his experience level and a veteran classification, and Kyle Haynes, who we sought, who was our shortstop for nearly 2 seasons. We went out and moved Kyle to create some room for David Cooper. And that's how strongly we felt about David Cooper and his situation and how good a player was. He was a very productive player for us. He will have a good season, in Three Rivers, with the new expansion team in Canada. It's a great fit for him. But also, it is a statement that we felt very strongly about a couple of the young players that we signed last year, Zach Mitchell, Chase Tucker. I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. And at some point in our league, with the classifications the way they are, the veterans, the LS5s, the LS4s, some of those things that fans may not quite understand, along with salary cap, some decisions are based on some of those other factors as well. Now, again, we don't make a move unless we feel very good about what we've gotten, and that's really the case with David. A tremendous player, really a fan favorite, a favorite of the coaching staff, a favorite of mine, the way he played the game. He was everything that we look for in a RailCat player, exciting on both sides of the ball, could do some things well, extremely well, and a big contributor to our success, especially when he entrenched himself as the shortstop. But we have 2 young players who we're going to give every opportunity to in Tucker and Mitchell, when they come to spring training.
Now, you've been chatting about some familiar names. Let's talk a little bit about players that have just been brought in, and one in particular that is with the RailCats for the first time, and that's Matt McSwain. He's intriguing because he's a veteran pitcher, 7 seasons in the Pirates organization. He reached Double-A, has a career ERA under 4. He's been both a starter and a reliever. Is he somebody that you're looking at as a top-line starter?
We certainly are. And Matt, one of his attractions to coming to Gary was the opportunity to start. I think if you look in his career, you'll see probably his best numbers. He had a year in the Carolina League where he was a full-time starting pitcher. That's what he did coming out of college, out of Elon College. And, and somebody that came from a recommendation of somebody I trust and a name very familiar, Willie Glenn, who was his pitching coach in the Pirates organization shortly. We felt like Matt is one of those guys that, given the right opportunity in the right environment, can have that success that he needs. And any time you're dealing with a pitcher who will experience our league for the first time, there's an unknown factor. And whether that guy pitched in the big leagues, AAA, AA, but at least Matt brings that experience. He brings a background of success, and we're hopeful that he'll come into spring training and establish himself as one of our top starting pitchers.
Greg, during the month of February, obviously you were busy with player transactions, but also you were out of town. You were in Texas as a manager in the Texas Winter League. Your team won the championship. You won Manager of the Year, and also you were able to make a signing out of that as well, signing the top pick in the draft out of the Texas Winter League. Take us through that experience.
Certainly one of those things that many managers in our league, the Frontier League, many of the independent leagues, along with scouts and other organizations, have become a part of. There's a couple of these winter leagues, one in Palm Springs and this one down in Harlingen, Texas. And, we felt like we didn't want to, the advent of tryout camps, league tryout camps don't exist any longer in terms of the American Association. We host our own tryout camps, as every team does, but this is just another avenue to find players and becomes another source. And, it was a good experience. We were fortunate that we found one player that we think is going to compete very well in that rookie classification, Michael Oros. Pitched at Sam Houston State, had some success there as a collegiate. And, and we also found an outfielder that we looked to invite to camp, and Alex Foltz, who had, playing time in Evansville and a good career at James Madison. So certainly, whether you find a player or not at some of these venues, isn't, I guess the ultimate factor in whether it's successful or not, but you get a chance to see, what you've got, what kind of opportunities are out there for players, and you get a chance to really, compare those players to maybe what you have coming to spring training. So, in essence, it was a good experience and something we'll probably look forward to do again, because it is a good source, for players.
Now, as a follow-up to that, obviously this abbreviated Winter League season, a lot different than a full season with the RailCats. Yes. But what's the excitement level like still to win a championship?
Well, certainly I think everybody will agree that we got to focus on this RailCats championship in 2013. That's the goal, as it is every season, and we need to we feel like we've dropped off a little bit in terms of where we're at in the standings last year, especially, and we've got a long ways to go to reestablish ourselves. But I don't want people to forget the success we've had here. But the way to remind them most is to win a championship here in 2013 for the RailCats. But still, anytime you're on the field competing, and as the season gets on, it's really a showcase opportunity for players. But it's just like anything else you see, whether it's like this World Baseball Classic. As the games get a little closer to the end and they start to actually mean something, you see the competitive fire come out, whether it's from the manager and the coaches to the players. And this excitement, it's one of those championships you look at and one of those rewards you look at, and the reward is seeing the players enjoying themselves. And they were there for a month working very hard, and their number one priority was to find a job for themselves with a professional baseball team. But I think for that one day or those 2 days during the postseason run, that these guys will remember this for a long time.
Greg, you were talking a little bit earlier about tryouts and avenues for finding different players. You have a tryout that's coming up March 16th and 17th at Cumberland University in Tennessee. You've been there a couple seasons now holding tryouts. And one thing I'm curious about is you get a good number of players in there, pitchers as well as position players, and they have a very short amount of time to try to convince you or the Schaumburg Boomers manager Jamie Bennett to sign them to a contract. You're seeing such a small sample size. How are you able to pick out a guy who you think would be a good fit, or at least invite him to camp?
Well, I think that's once you find the secret to that, Matt Friedman, in terms of scouting and picking the right guy, you'll make millions of dollars, because whether it's the NFL and these combines that they go watch these players, or whether it's a tryout camp, I don't know a baseball, unless you're talking about the upper echelon, a Roger Clemens, a CC Sabathia, and you watch him in a tryout camp, you put everybody else into one category at this level. And what you see for 2 days is not going to be representative of what you might see in a full season. So you look for some things that the skill set might provide in terms of, are they comparable to a player you have? That's what I always do, and I think that's what Jamie does for the Schaumburg Club. He compares that player to somebody he likes. Hey, has this guy got a little Adam Klein in him? Does he have a little Mike Massaro? As a pitcher, does he have a little Josh Hobble, or does he have a little Will Kraut? Those kind of things. I look for things where I can compare him to current players that we have. Because on these tryout fields, the guy that might be the best player at the tryout camp might be relative to the talent that he's in. And the tough thing for these players, they're trying to showcase their ability in a 1 or 2 day event. And a guy might go 3 for 4 and feel like the statistics are what's going to get him signed, when really it's the skill set and some of the things that he brings to the table, how he fits in your club. Now, of course, with our ball club, where we're limited with the number of players we can bring to training camp, we may be looking for just a particular position at this camp as well. But this camp has proven to be very successful for us in Tennessee. A lot of talent. 2 years ago, 2 players with Major League experience attended the tryout camp. So you never know who's going to show up at these things. But it's a source that we've always used, and the history has told me that you've got to value this resource, because you never know who's going to show up, and that's why you do it.
Now, finally, Greg, I want to ask you a non-RailCats question,
Sure.
but baseball related, because I love to get your takes on these type of things. The hot topic during spring training has been Cardinals manager Mike Matheny talking about Major League Baseball should ban home plate collisions. What's your opinion on that?
Boy, that's a tough one for me to disagree with Mike Matheny, who obviously is much more of an expert on it than I am. I do worry that sometimes any of these decisions are made, if it's a safety-oriented decision, and the way certainly things have changed over the years, whether it's the concussions in the NFL or, when we're looking out for the safety of players, that's of the utmost importance. But also, you don't want a decision made based on one incident that happened over the last 25 years. And if you look at the sample size, the Buster Posey, I think, is the incident that happened a couple of years ago, has really been the, the onus for where a lot of this is coming from. Now, some of these collisions, though, have taken place where I think a player goes out of his way. Now, again, I'm not sure how you're going to eliminate that, because competitive nature takes over, and just like in the NFL, as much as there's fines, suspensions, it hasn't eliminated, these head-to-head collisions. But, one of those things, I'd have to look and see what the alternative is. Every player has to slide. There's injuries at the plate all the time on slides, at the plate. It's I think people might forget that baseball, they'll say it's a non-contact game, but if you've ever seen a collision at second base on a takeout, you've seen an outfielder and infielder colliding, you've seen some things happen at first base between a first baseman and a base runner. I think people might be surprised at the amount of contact that happens in a baseball game. So obviously safety is a big concern. The new change with batting helmets, the coaches wearing the helmets on the field. So there's been things that have done. I think it's going to take a couple of years to really look into this and see if that's the best avenue.
Once again, that's RailCats skipper Greg Tagert. This has been episode number 2 of the RailCats Chat. Stay tuned on RailCatsBaseball.com for more information, and we'll see you here at the ballpark really soon, starting in the month of May.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
Sure, Matt.
I always do wonder about those tryouts. I just think it's hard.